All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Remarkable Coach podcast. I'm your host, Micheal Pacheco, and today with me, I have Alecia Wellen. Alecia draws upon 20 years of professional experience in varying roles in the financial sector, compliance, marketing, operations, and sales capacities. As the founder and CEO of her own coaching and consulting firm, she offers professional coaching, consulting, and Reiki to national and international leaders and high achievers looking to leverage their inflection points to reach a higher potential, whether it be in their personal or professional lives. She is seasoned in helping entrepreneurs, executives, and small businesses explore where they are now, how they want to accelerate, and where they want to go next. Alecia, welcome to the Remarkable Coach podcast.
Thank you, Micheal. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I always like to kick off the podcast by simply inviting our guests to just talk a little bit about yourself and what got you into coaching.
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting journey. You had mentioned I've got 20 years of experience in finance, which is very true. Backing up, before that, I, took the traditional course of action through school, undergrad in marketing, master's in finance. All of the corporate job work that I've been doing is in the financial sector. And, in all of the firms that I've worked with over the years, there were opportunities for coaching and mentor programs. So, I always took advantage of those, either as the mentor or the mentee. And I started getting some really nice feedback about what I was sort of contributing to my mentees and larger groups. And, people just kind of saying, oh my gosh, why aren't you doing this for a living? Why don't you get paid for this? And, I always blew that off, like, finance, and I love the stock market and really enjoy investing money. So it just was something, I did in passing, but I heard it enough that I started thinking, well, what does that look like? What does a coaching career look like? What does that entail? Started doing a lot of research, and lo and behold, I found a really nice program that I was interested in. I think we all get to a certain place in our careers where we kind of stop what we're doing and we take inventory, look at the lay of the land and think, oh my gosh, okay, how did I get here? Do I want to be here? Is this what I really want to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the answer is yes. I love my corporate job and my finance career, but as a side dish to that, I thought, well, I'm not going to regret learning anything new. So I kind of dove into this really great coaching program that I had done a lot of research on and decided I'm going to go all in. So I signed up for all the classes and certification. I committed to that from the get-go. And before I knew it, I had a budding business. So here I am.
Nice. And did you go do that through ICF or another coaching certification company? Or?
Yeah, so it's actually the coaching certification program that I did. It was in tandem with ICF. So the first one was with Coactive. It's CTI. Mm-hmm. So I'm a certified professional coactive coach with CTI. And then I am a professional certified coach, a PCC, with the ICF, which is sort of the gold standard of the coaching world. So I've got both of those under my belt, and I enjoyed both of those curriculums.
Awesome. Yeah, and how did you? I'm very curious about this. So I do swing trading myself, and I went to university in Japan. I speak fluent Japanese, so I know that Reiki stands for ghost energy. The kanji is ghost energy. That's an interesting. That's a bridge. So if you could maybe talk a little bit about that. That's quite a leap going from one to the other.
Yeah, it's again, it's something that I happened upon and decided to marry together in a very weird way, just kind of set myself apart. I think, a lot of people call themselves coaches these days. Some are credentialed and some are not. The credentials were super important to me. But timing being what it was at the time that I was doing research for the coaching program, I had a couple of people mention to me Reiki and how they thought I would be really great at it. And, I love a good tarot reading every now and again, and I meet with mediums for fun. My sister and I have always done stuff like that. And, I heard it enough. I'm a big believer that the universe doesn't allow you to miss out on what's meant for you. Mm-hmm. I think that we get little whispers from the universe and from people, and, it turns from a whisper into a nag. And so I had heard in a very short period of time, it was probably about 6 months, I had 3 different people talk to me about Reiki. Mm-hmm. one of them in particular said, like, there's something special with your hands. Have you ever considered becoming a Reiki master? And I always blew it off. I was like, no, are you kidding? I'm a corporate person. I climb a ladder and I get a solid paycheck, love my 401k. And at the time that I had started into the coaching program, I thought, again, I'm not going to regret learning something new. So why not? Like, why not look into this? So I just dove in and decided to become attuned and become a Reiki master at the same time that I did the coaching curriculum.
Yeah.
I did pretty quickly that was going to be sort of my niche, is introducing energy into corporate America, and see kind of where that took me. And it's been quite the ride, very unexpected and exciting, and also really fun to watch, type A people like me kind of face this energy space and actually start paying attention to it and seeing what the positive effects are in their day-to-day lives, whether it be personal or professional. So it was just something that I decided to toy around with and create as my niche. And I don't regret it. It's been really fun.
That's awesome. For our uninitiated viewers and listeners, can you just give us a quick, brief rundown of what exactly is Reiki? How do you apply that in this setting? And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, in short, it's energy healing. So everything and everybody is made up of energy at varying frequencies. It's kind of that thing when you walk into a room and you feel something and you're not really sure exactly what it is. We all bring energy to space, and an orange on your table has energy, an energy frequency, just as you and I do. Some are more subtle than others, and it's the energy within us that sometimes can get blocked up. Sometimes with physical or emotional injury, energy can kind of get blocked up and stagnate in certain areas of your body. And so Reiki is, an effort to balance out that energy and clear blockages so that you can, from top to bottom, find a balance and a synergy, and get rid of dis-ease, if you will. And so, I actually specialize in remote Reiki, which is a little harder sometimes for people to wrap their minds around, because I don't have to be in the same room as somebody when I'm doing it. And it was something that I decided to specialize in, and it served very well through the pandemic. A lot of people were able to tap into that and really enjoy the benefits of it. But we all are made up of our aura, and we have chakras and meridians. And so your aura brings energy in. You've got your chakras, crown, third eye, throat, heart, solar plexus, sacral, and root. And all of those are aligned through your body, and you balance the energy, and then your meridians kind of distribute that through your body to create a balance. And so, people have described many different things through Reiki, sleeping better, mental clarity, emotional balance. It's different for everybody. But yeah, using that into coaching, it is taking something type A. People will hire me as a coach or a business consultant. Some of them want to leverage me for my 20-year business acumen. And then they find out about this side dish of energy healing, right? And it doesn't quite equate. So it's not a condition of my coaching package, but it is something I offer. And I would say 90% of my clients take me up on it. Some come into the coaching space and they say, I'm not interested in that. Don't even ask me about it. Yeah, they might circle back and ask about it, and then they introduce it. So it's really something, I don't hard sell it. It's something that people have to be called to do. I find that it's more valuable and resonant if they're asking me about it. So if they want to integrate it into their coaching package, we do it.
Interesting. Okay, would you talk a little bit about what remote Reiki is and what that looks like? I'm unfamiliar with that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, to go back kind of to the basics, typically if you're doing Reiki with somebody, you're in the same room with them. Not massage therapy. It's not a hands-on approach. But typically you lay on a table and the Reiki master sort of holds their hands in varying positions over the certain chakra points. And there's a meditation that occurs, and every Reiki master is a little bit different. When you're dealing with Reiki, time and space do not exist. And that's a hard concept in this linear world to hold on to. But the best metaphor I have for it is, fear, faith, and love are all things that we feel, but we don't see.
Mhm.
And stand across oceans. You can feel love or fear from somebody or faith between states or countries or, wherever you are. And so energy works very much the same. So with Reiki, for me, we pick, a day at a time. It usually takes about an hour. And I go into a meditation and I spend about 3 to 5 minutes on each chakra. It's very much a lucid dream for me. So with my attunement, I just go into a meditation. I act as a conduit. So, I'm opening up for energy of my client to come through me. And then there's an experience that happens there. For me, again, it's very much a lucid dream. So I do, hear things or see things, and they're very much random for me. And so I goes up into a synopsis and then send them to the client at the end of the session. And then we discuss it. So it's always fun for me to discuss it because, again, it's very random. So they tell me sort of how it resonates and, what they're feeling or incurring on the other end of that. But, again, the time and space, it doesn't exist. And so a lot of my clients will go on about their day. They'll hire me to do it and forget I'm doing it. I've done Reiki for kids on the playground where their parents will say, hey, so-and-so is going to be playing at this time. Can you do a Reiki session for them? So you can be at the gym, you can be at work, you can, some of my clients decide to meditate alongside me, just, to get an hour to themselves to really dial into that energy space. The clearing and the balancing happens regardless of being in the same room. Quite frankly, in my opinion, and I think most of my clients would agree, remote Reiki, sometimes the benefits are better when you're not in the same space. So if somebody breathes different or they cry or there's a hiccup in their breath, I stop and sort of check in on them, right? I'm a human, so I want to see, like, are you okay? I want to check in. And it doesn't necessarily break the session, but it does distract me. So I would argue that remote Reiki is a little more beneficial in that it's a straight hour of, really honing in on each of the chakras with no distraction.
Interesting. Yeah, I love the concept of like a lack or there is no time or space. There's a story that I'm absolutely going to butcher, but I'll try and tell it anyway, about Ram Dass and Timothy Leary. They were both teaching at the school and they wanted to go to somewhere in South America and climb a mountain. And Ram Dass got his pilot's license and bought this crappy old plane. And by the time, and I think Timothy Leary and another buddy of theirs was going to meet him down there, it ended up not working out. They all met up in Mexico. Timothy Leary and the other guy had found mushrooms and said to Ram Dass, before his name was Ram Dass, like, there's no such thing as time. And that was, kind of projected this whole big thing. Timothy Leary went his way and Ram Dass went his way. It's a fascinating subject.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much something that we put in this human life, right, to live by. But when you're dealing with energy, and like I said, my favorite metaphors are the fear, faith, and love, because those are just, things that everybody buys into for the most part, right? Separate and apart from the energy space, but they definitely act and feel very similar. So, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your clients. Who's your ideal client? Who do you typically work with?
So again, I'm really big on the value and resonance. I think there's so many coaches out there these days. Some are credentialed, some are not. We all bring something different and special to the table. So chemistry is super important. I don't hard sell what I'm offering. It's really allowing space for referrals or clients to come my way that happen upon what I'm doing. So, I make space for anyone who is up for coaching with me and sort of what I offer. What I find to be the common denominator is growth and transition. And that can look and feel different, right? I work a lot with entrepreneurs. I work a lot with executives, and I work a lot with small businesses. The executive piece is interesting. A lot of times it's women entering the C-suite for the first time. And sometimes it's executives exiting the C-suite into retirement, right? They're so tethered to their identity being in that professional executive role that they don't know really who they are or what they want to do afterwards.
Sure.
And I don't work with just women. I work with men and women. My roster is predominantly women, I will admit. But it really is a matter of growth and transition. And a lot of times that can look different. It can be people getting married or becoming parents for the first time. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. And so that resonates with a lot of people, and sort of balancing work and home life as well. So it's really the growth and transition piece. It's people wanting to do something bigger, better, or different, and sort of on the cusp of something, and they're not exactly sure what it is, but they know they want to do something bigger, better, or different. And so they need help navigating what that is. And, the coaching that I do it's coactive. So it's not just about what you're doing. We can set and attain goals all day long. That's, in my opinion, easy, right? Mm-hmm. But more about not just what you want to do, but who you want to be through the transition and on the other side of that transformation. Because, if you're vibrating higher and you're doing something bigger, it's going to require a bigger version of yourself. So, that can be 2.0, 3.0, 5.0. It just depends on who you are and what you're doing. But it's a lot about the transformation and who you are becoming as you're deconditioning and breaking cycles. So it's really that growth and transition phase for people.
Yeah, it's that classic phrase, what got you here won't take you there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So we get a lot of coaches on the podcast that work in the C-suite and with transitioning management and leadership. You're the first person I think that we've spoke to that also works with C-suite moving into retirement. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, because that strikes me that's got to be a big move. Because if you're in the C-suite, you're working 80 hours weeks, you're flying around depending on how big the company is, right? But you're heavily involved, and transition from that to retirement, whatever retirement might look like, that's got to be a hell of a transition.
Yeah, it is. And, it's a fun space to work in because, well, just to what I said, it's a lot of people whose identity is very much wrapped up in the company that they're working at and their tenure, right? And a lot of times they're working at these firms for, a couple decades and at varying roles. And so they're very much invested in what they've created and how they've helped mold the company and the teams. And sometimes it's hard to let go of that, right? It's a pride point. It's something that you've worked really hard on and you've spent your life's work doing. And so when they think about transitioning out into retirement, or a lot of times it could be board positions, right? It's still within the company, but it's a board position. So they're not necessarily the same type of decision maker. And, they're not necessarily on the front line, but they're still orchestrating a lot of the company culture, processes, operations, different things. And so it's very much, it's not an identity crisis. I don't like to call it that, but it's very much a growth and transition phase of, just what the next step is. And a lot of that comes with work in delegation and empowerment in a different way, because they're grooming somebody and a succession plan and a depth chart and strengthening their edge, right? But they don't really have the grasp on what it's going to have, how the company is going to be next. And so there's a lot of perspectives work that goes into that, and aligning with new values and redefining fulfillment. A component that I call it the saboteur. It's sort of the imposter syndrome, the limiting self-talk, keeping you safe and small. Mm-hmm. That tour really ramps up when someone is exiting out of the C-suite, because it's, did I do a good job? Maybe I didn't do a good job. The company's going in a different direction. Is that because of something I did? What family life look like now that I'm home rather than in the office 80 hours a week? And so it's really a fun space, and it was an unexpected one. I had one person hire me for that, and then it became a referral point. And so I have several on my roster that are sort of in that space. And the beautiful part for me in it is the work itself, but that demographic is typically not open to the energy piece. And so that's a fun space of introducing and watching them sort of discover those that are open for it. that energy component and what that looks and feels like in this next chapter for them. And I can tell you that a lot of times that weighs very heavily and is a big part of the integration and something that they pay attention to more.
Sure.
Whether it's going into the board position directly after the C-suite or just strict retirement.
Yeah, I'm sure. You mentioned, grooming a successor and coming up with a succession plan. I know that CEOs do that. Do you also find like information officers, ops officers, marketing officers, are other officers doing that sort of thing as well? Or is that primarily with CEOs that you're working on that with?
In a traditional sense, it is the CEOs, but there are a lot of COOs, CTOs, CIOs, a CMO. They have their own version, right? And I think it's really tethered to them wanting to hold on to the integrity of what they've built, right? And so they want to groom somebody to step into their space and maintain what they've done. But that's
where I can respect the work that they've done previously, right?
Yeah, and it's also, a lot of perspectives work on doing that and allowing space for empowering the new person to look at it with fresh eyes, right? And especially if the company's in a growth phase, which a lot of times it is, what does that mean? And what are the different strategic points? And, whether that's the financial component or the people component or different processes and operations. And so, yeah, there's a non-traditional, I would say, sense of succession planning that goes on with different members of the C-suite.
Yeah, interesting. So you've talked a little bit about your clients and who they are. I'm curious to know, how do you get those clients? You do some different stuff. You've got different skills. How do you market yourself? How do you market something like Reiki to the C-suite, for example? I'm curious to know about.
It's a good question. So I don't do much marketing. When I started this business, it was, I was teasing it out and seeing, I was following a passion, and I wanted to see, you take a step forward, and the universe takes 10, right, to sort of validate what you're doing. And I went into it wanting to do something for the greater good and give back, from a place of passion for me and fulfillment, but to really cater to and provide a service for other people. And so I wasn't in a position per se to be spending a lot of marketing dollars. And it really was more about leveraging my network. And a 20-year stint in the finance world helped me do that, right? And I can't express enough how important exposure and networking is. And networking is kind of a dirty word. When I think of networking, I think of those, after work happy hours where everyone's standing around and nobody really wants to talk to each other and you're getting a drink.
Those are literally.
Yeah, not my favorite, but it's, I took a different lens on networking, and I just started openly talking about what I was doing and what I hoped to achieve and giving back to a certain community. And before I knew it, it really was my network working for me. And I started getting a lot of referrals and people calling, asking questions. And, I had mentioned before, I don't sell Reiki. It's just not, it doesn't make sense, because energy work is something that you're called to do. And it's got to be valuable and resonant for the recipient. They've got to be the ones to feel like a blockage, or, not the clarity piece is missing, or, something is calling them to do the energy work. Now, when people visit my website, they get introduced to Reiki and they start asking questions, right? And so again, it's not something that I necessarily market, but it really started out very much as referral and, a lot of pro bono work. I did link up, I do some pro bono work with the college that I went to. Graduating seniors always have a lot of questions and need a lot of guidance and help as they're entering the workforce. And so that creates a very nice pipe of people who I work with as they're entering the workforce. And then as they need help or move up in their space, it's very helpful. So I do a little bit of marketing. I love doing engagements like this to sort of get the message out and that kind of thing. But it really is a little bit of local marketing and a lot of word of mouth. And so it's more referral based really than anything, which is a really nice validation to me that I'm doing something that means something to my clients, and then they go and talk about it and send their friends and family or coworkers. With the bigger companies that I've worked with, it's interesting with, the succession planning. Sometimes I'll work with, a CEO that is exiting, and I will work with the person they're bringing up. And so it's a tandem approach and sort of working with them together. It's sort of like couples counseling. And so it's a nice way to sort of create space for both sides, old and new. And so that has served me well also.
Interesting. Nice. Yeah, I was curious about that. It would be, for myself as a marketer, I'm trying to think about how you would work something like Reiki into essentially, executive coaching is what you're, kind of talking about here. But I guess, so at what point do you feel compelled to, or do you actually, is there a point at which you feel compelled to suggest, recommend, or offer that to a client? Or do you completely just leave it up to them? If they'll discover it on your website, that's up to them. They'll figure it out. It's totally up to them.
Yeah, I mean, in the few spaces that I do marketing, it's like a three-pronged approach. It's consulting, coaching, and Reiki. So when people come across, local marketing, they'll see that and they might ask me about it. It's definitely on my website, so people do see that. You get a real sense, in a prospecting call, if someone's open to that kind of work or not. Mm-hmm. Some people that will say, hey, I saw Reiki on your website. I'm not interested in that. And they say it right up front. And so then now, are there opportunities within the coaching dynamic and the coaching sessions themselves that lend itself to energy work? Yes. And sometimes, depending on the client, I'll ask them, hey, this is a good space to discuss energy if you're open to it. Mm-hmm. They are, and sometimes they aren't. But it really is more or less people who are either called to do it, already interested in it, or curious about it, and they drive the conversation. And so they're the ones sort of asking, like, what is that? How does it work? How would you integrate that into coaching? And, it's their curiosity that sort of drives that. And it just creates a nice space for me to candidly talk about it. Mm-hmm. And, some people who are like, I don't really know about it, but, there's nothing to be afraid of. So like, let's just do it and see what happens. Right. And so it's kind of just a nice space of curiosity, and I've got nothing to lose and I'm hiring you. So let's see everything that you have to offer working at its best, and let's just do it. So, and I do also, to be transparent, I have some clients that come to me that are not interested in coaching at all. They only want to hire me for Reiki. And so there is like a very small component of my business where, they'll pay me for 12 months of Reiki, and I do it once a month. And sometimes we talk about it, sometimes we don't.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. So you mentioned three-pronged approach: consulting, coaching, Reiki. What's the line of demarcation for you between coaching and consulting?
Well, it's very gray. It's very gray. Yeah. Some people will say, well, I'll put it this way, and I say this in all of my prospecting calls very candidly. We are one person. So when I'm coaching or consulting with somebody, they may come to me and say, I only want to work on my business. And I say, yes, I'm open to that, but I'm going to say this. You are one person, and you can't compartmentalize your life. If you're going through a true transformation and you're deconditioning and you're breaking cycles, you want to level up and do something bigger, better, or different. You can't do just part of your life, right? Sure. So we're going to start there, but just know that I'm open to it evolving into personal, professional. There's a lot of flow that goes back and forth there. And so I let them know that I'm open for that. Mm-hmm. And 10 out of 10 times we get there with our coaching, because it'll, something will happen at home and they'll want to vent about that a little bit at the beginning of the coaching session. And then very quickly do you connect dots that something that is happening at home has resonance or impact in side, right? And so it's collectively something as a whole person that they work on, or learn a new perspective, or a mindset, if you will, that impacts both sides. And so that sort of all of that to say that when somebody comes to me for just consulting on a small business, oftentimes there's coaching in there. Now, if it comes to me just for, for a lack of a better term, life coaching, there's usually a consultative piece to that because they are working professionals most oftentimes.
Sure.
And so it's, again, there's a flow back and forth. And so I'll ask them, hey, I feel compelled to take off my coaching hat and put on my consulting hat. Are you open to that? And so, it usually starts off as one thing and then collectively comes in with all three or two of them.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. There's a running joke on this podcast with pretty much every executive coach that I've ever had on, is that the dirty little secret of every executive coach is that they're also a life coach. because
you go
for exactly the reason you stated, you can't compartmentalize that stuff. Like it spills over because you are one person. Yeah.
And a nice way of putting that I learned from CTI is, everybody is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. Everything that you do is inside you. And it's my job as the coach to tease that out, whether it's in a business capacity or a personal capacity or an energetic capacity. But yeah, I mean, people I think sometimes get turned off by the term life coach. And I just said it a minute ago, right? For the lack of a better term, life coach. But we are one person living a personal life and living a professional life. And all of us wear many hats, right? You're a parent, you're a professional, you're a volunteer, you're, many different things. And it's cool to start in one aspect of your life. But when I know that the coaching or the consulting is working is when I see it bleeding out into all to level up an entire person, right? And I want them to be aligned with their values, feeling fulfilled by the way that they define it, and combating that saboteur in all aspects of their life so that it's, coming full circle rather than killing it at work and really sucking at home or vice versa. So I think it's really important to point that out. But yeah, I buy into your dirty little secret.
Yeah. Well, I've had one guest on the podcast who vehemently denied that he was anything remotely close to a life coach. He was an executive coach, and that's it. I was like, okay, all right. I won't step on your toes.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue executives have lives, right? That's the way I view it, is that executives have lives and, moms have executive presence, right? It can go both ways if you're looking at, a parent. So, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think the lessons, lessons are cross-cultural, right? And by cross-cultural, what I mean is, right, a lesson can apply to business, it can apply to your personal life, it can apply to your family, it can apply to whatever, the different areas of your life.
Yeah, I agree.
What sort of things did you first struggle with when you started coaching?
Niche was a big one. And a lot of the individuals that I met in the coaching curriculum courses, it was interesting because I went into this wanting to learn something. I wasn't necessarily doing it to start a business. It was wanting to learn something new and to hone some new skills. And very quickly, as I was sitting in this group of 30 plus people every weekend, it became clear that they were doing it to start a business, or their companies were sending them in to sort of enhance the corporate side of the business. Sure. And so a lot of people started talking about niche, and I did have a moment of anxiety where I thought, okay, I'm going to buy into maybe creating a side hustle here. And, oh no, I can't just do all things for all people. And so what does that mean? Right. And so I think niche was a scary place in that when you're starting a business, you want to do all things to all people because you want to make money. So you're not going to say no to a prospect. But what I found is if you become a yes person and you don't have a niche, you're not really serving in your greatest capacity for the people who are searching for something. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm not a wellness coach. I don't specialize in neurodiversity, like ADD or ADHD. C-suite. You know, I think that there are people better suited and more professional with different credentials that can do that.
Yeah.
Niche was it was a panic moment for me, but then I reminded myself that my niche looked and felt very different from others because it was the energy space, right? So when people started talking about leadership coaching, you know, HR consulting, career coaching, wellness coaching, you can get 1,000 different certifications for 1,000 different things. And nobody else that I had met was doing the energy piece. And so there's a moment where, okay, I think I have my niche, but also it's very different. And like, am I crazy for even trying this? Because, you know, energy and type A seem to match up or make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a while to sort of embrace that and get, you know, really loving to myself and my niche about what I was doing and that it was different and a little weird, but also in a very beautiful way, it does come together and it does make sense for the type A person or the C-suite person to just shine a light on something that they hadn't considered before. So that was a long way of answering your question that I think, you know, my biggest hurdle when starting really was the niche piece. And, you know, I just don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in failure. I think everything happens for a reason. The universe is never going to let you miss out on what's meant for you. So you try a bunch of stuff on and you see what works. And, you know, nobody can do what I do the way I do it. And so in that vein, there's not a lot of competition there, even for other coaches that do something similar to what I do, because I'm bringing a different energy to it. It's my expertise and it's something that I create and I build. And, you know, it's my own unique way. And so as I built that niche and as I embraced it and sort of dove into it and, you know, talked about very authentically talking about what I was doing, that's sort of like, you build it, they will come, right? And that's hard to buy into because I think in this human world, we're so obsessed with controlling and creating and driving something, which is necessary, right? I mean, you can use money as an example. We all have to make it in order to feed mouths. But if you let go of the control a little bit, it's letting go to go up is a good way to put it. If you allow space for something and remove the limit, right? Like this can be better than anything I can imagine because I haven't quite done it before, right? It's allowing space for something that's unaccounted for, something unexpected. I do want it to be bigger, better, different, and something unexpected that I can't quite imagine yet.
Yeah.
And once you sort of make space for that and just try it on, the universe validates you and you learn really quick that what you're doing does matter and you are doing it in the right way. I'm not a binary person. I don't like black and white, right or wrong, good or bad, but you get that validation. And for me, it was by referral. And so the business grew exponentially year over year. And there's no better validation than having people come to you and want help from you for what they're trying to do in their lives, whether it's consulting, coaching, Reiki, or a combination of all three. So yeah, I mean, I think niche was really my biggest hurdle. And once I sort of let go of trying to control it so much, it's been opened up and, you know, we'll see where I go next, but for now it's working.
Nice. Yeah, I think to speak to your point about, you know, how you come with your own energy, you've got your own style. With coaching, that's one thing that's so fascinating about the coaching space is that it is so it's so much more personality defined, I think, than something like consulting. I did consulting for a number of years with enterprise corporations and SMBs, and it didn't necessarily matter that I have the personality that I have. What mattered was that I had the knowledge that I had, right? But with coaching, it's one-on-one. You're spending a lot of personal time. You need that trust, and because of that, I think, you know, there's room for you, right? There's room for whoever wants to do it, good at doing, whoever feels called to it. There's room for that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a really nice thing, and I say this to every prospect, you know, I don't work with just everybody. I work with a small group of people throughout the year, because I want to make myself available. I want the quality over quantity. And I think that's really important. And making myself available in between the coaching sessions is really important, because a lot happens. A lot of magic happens in between coaching sessions. And it's validation that the work that we're doing is amounting to something. Mm-hmm. And so, I tell every client, every prospect, it's got to be valuable and resonant to them. Like, I come from a finance background. I can hard sell anybody and I can get what I want. But in the coaching space, I'm not interested in doing that, because what I want is a client to hire me because they feel value and resonance. Without the resonance, they're not going to achieve bigger, better things. They're not going to level up, because it's me barking orders or creating an agenda for them. And that's just not how this works. That's not how I've created my business. My business is, you have everything that you need inside of you. You don't know how to access it, and I'm going to help you do that. But you have to be open to that. It has to feel valuable and resonant. And there's chemistry there, yes, but there's got to be sort of what I call designing the alliance, right? It's not just about what they need from me as a coach, but it's what I need from them as a client. It's a two-way street. And in order for it to really work, and for them to decondition and break a cycle to really do something different, it's unaccounted for. It does not lie within an agenda. It's not about me telling them exactly what to do. It's about me teasing out what it is that they know is in there. They just don't know how to access it. And so we do talk a lot in my prospecting calls about value and resonance and what we need from each other. And, and I also, frankly, I encourage every one of my prospects to interview other coaches. I want them to have a benchmark. And so a lot of times people get surprised at that. And they're like, oh my gosh, are you telling me to go somewhere else? No, I'm not telling you to go somewhere else, but go do your due diligence, right? That's part of business. That's part of a negotiation. Go out and see everything that's out there to make sure the feeling that you have inside is resonant, so that you can achieve this thing, this unaccounted for thing that's bigger than anything you can imagine, right? It's removing the limit. And I'm here to help with it, but I want to make sure that they've got the right gal.
Yeah. Awesome. I like that. Alecia, I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything else that you would like to chat about that we haven't touched upon already?
I don't think so. You've asked some really great questions. And, like I said, I'm just super happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me. Thanks for highlighting the energy piece. I think I love getting that message out there. I think people are integrating that more and more into their day-to-day lives. And, what I'm doing is a little bit different than most. So I'm happy to talk about that and highlight it. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Love it. Awesome. Alecia, you have a complimentary strategy session for our viewers and listeners. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. What I was just describing is, a prospecting call, right? So somebody will call me and want to get to know me a little bit, and that's not the complimentary strategy session. The complimentary strategy session is if somebody knows for sure that they want to work with me and I want to work with them, and there's, the alliance there and the chemistry. Everybody gets a complimentary strategy session no matter what, because that's where we sort of dive into the data, right? Tell me about your values, tell me about your fulfillment. Let's get really acquainted with that saboteur, so that I know what to listen for and who I'm dealing with that's keeping someone small. So the complementary strategy session is, once we've committed time to each other, anyone is welcome to call me and get to know me. And if they're inclined to work with me, then everybody gets an added session to the package, so that we can get, some basic directed data out of the way, so that we're getting to know each other and what I can help with, what they want out of coaching. And really just laying the foundation and the framework for it. So anybody can schedule that through my website or by emailing me.
Awesome. And your website is Alecia Wellen. That's Wellen. Alecia's L. I'll just spell the website out. It'll be easier that way. ALECIAWELLEN.com. We'll also add that to the show notes. My tongue is twisted right now. Alecia, where else can our listeners and viewers connect with you online? Do you do social media at all? LinkedIn?
I have a love-hate with social media, but I am on there. I am, most of what I do is on LinkedIn, but I do have an Instagram, which is just Alecia Wellen Coaching. So you got the website, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Awesome. We'll get those links into the show notes as well.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for joining us as well. We'll catch you guys next time. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks.